There's only one reasonable thing to do after a terrorist attack, and that's to give unlimited airtime to defenders of the ideology that led to the terrorist attack. Oh, did I say reasonable? I meant really, really stupid. But that won't stop all of the major news networks from spending the next month bombarding us with the absurd notion that Islam is as peaceful as a teddy bear, napping on a bed of puppy love, wrapped in a warm ray of sunshine. I have a bit more respect for my viewers, so I'm going to try something different. I'm going to help you understand why the terrorist attack happened and why many others will inevitably follow. And you have my personal guarantee that if you pay attention for the next few minutes, you will understand all of the nearly 21,000 terrorist attacks that have been committed in the name of Islam since 9/11. It's always good to begin things with a prayer, so let's stop by the interfaith prayer service that followed the second Boston massacre. Nasser Wadadi is sharing a verse that gives him comfort in the midst of tragedy.
From Surah Al-Ma'idah, the passage declares that it is inspired by the Jewish tradition, by a decree to the children of Israel, that whoever kills a soul, it is as if he killed mankind entirely, and whoever saves a life, it is as if he saved all of mankind.
Is that what the Quran says, Mr. Wadadi? Can I get another witness?
Well, why don't you read the part where it says that anyone who takes a life is as if he killed the whole world, and anyone who saves a life is as if he saved the whole world.
How about a third?
The Holy Quran teaches that whoever kills an innocent it is as if he has killed all mankind.
I've seen the same claim about the Quran on CNN and Fox News and the Wall Street Journal, so it's probably a wonderful place to start. Let's take a closer look at America's favorite verse of the Quran, Surah 5, verse 32. For this reason did we prescribe to the children of Israel, I guess Wadadi was right when he said that this verse comes from the Jewish tradition. For this reason did we prescribe to the children of Israel that whoever slays a soul, unless it be for manslaughter or for mischief in the land, it is as though he slew all men. And whoever keeps it alive, it is as though he kept alive all men. And certainly our apostles came to them with clear arguments, but even after that, many of them certainly act extravagantly in the land. So the Quran says that this teaching was prescribed to the children of Israel, the Jews. In fact, we know exactly where this comes from in the Jewish writings. The Talmud, Mishnah Sanhedrin, chapter 4, reads, Adam was created alone to teach you that if anyone destroys one life, Scripture reckons it as if he had destroyed a whole world. Conversely, if anyone preserves one life, Scripture reckons it as if he had preserved a whole world. Given Islam's perpetual hostility to Jews, going so far as to call them the worst of creatures, isn't it ironic that the most peaceful passage in the entire Quran happens to be a quotation from the Jewish Talmud, where a Jewish rabbi is commenting on the Torah? It's even more ironic when you realize that according to Surah 5:32, Allah gives Jews the right to carry out legal punishments for manslaughter or for mischief in the land. Well, what land would that be, where Jews have legal authority from Allah to enforce Jewish law? Is it A, Australia, B, China, C, Saskatchewan, or D, Israel? So according to the most popular Quran verse in America today, the land of Israel belongs to the Jews. Do keep that in mind when you quote it, my Muslim friends. But we're not done yet, because things get even more interesting when we read the verse in context. Context is important, isn't it, Congressman Ellison?
You know, their books are complex. They're compiled, and taking them out of context is a very easy thing to do.
Context, context, context. Surah 5, verse 32 was a Jewish teaching. So what did Allah ordain for Muslims? The answer is found in the very next verse. Surah 5, verse 33, a verse that you will never hear from President Obama, declares, "The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His Apostle, Muhammad, and strive to make mischief in the land is only this, that they should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides, or they should be imprisoned. This shall be as a disgrace for them in this world, and in the hereafter they shall have a grievous chastisement." Verse 32 is about what Jews are supposed to do in the land that Allah gave them. Verse 33 is about what Muslims are supposed to do if someone commits the vague crime of making mischief, or as some translators put it, striving after corruption. According to Surah 5:33, if you make mischief or strive after corruption in a Muslim land, Muslims are supposed to kill you or crucify you, or for lesser crimes, chop off body parts or imprison or exile you.
Islam has a proud tradition of tolerance.
So, what counts as making mischief? Lots of things. Apostasy, preaching a religion other than Islam, adultery, becoming too westernized, things like that. If you violate Sharia, you're making mischief, you're spreading corruption, and you have to pay. The most extreme form of mischief making, of course, is bringing a non-Muslim military into a Muslim country to interfere in the affairs of state. That's definitely a death penalty. Ever wonder why Major Nadal Malik Hassan felt so comfortable shooting his fellow American soldiers who were heading to Afghanistan? They were going to Afghanistan to make mischief in a Muslim land, and there's a punishment for that in Islam. The Quran calls it killing mischief makers. We call it workplace violence that has nothing to do with Islam. All of this is perfectly obvious from the text, but it's easy to overlook the fact that Surah 5:33 advocates terrorism and killing civilians. You see, in Islam, the people who go out and fight in battle aren't the only people responsible for the battle. According to Muhammad, those who fund the military, the people who pay the bills, are equally responsible for the fighting that takes place. Now, there is an American military presence in various Muslim countries. What's the penalty? Death. But who pays for the American military to be in those countries? That would be the American taxpayer, your average U.S. civilian. So if your average U.S. citizen is just as responsible for causing problems in Muslim countries as the U.S. soldiers who are fighting in Muslim countries, what's the penalty? Do you see now why terrorists will not hesitate to kill American civilians? Surah 5, verse 33 of the Quran justifies attacks not only against military targets like the soldiers at Fort Hood, but also against everyone who supports these soldiers. This verse justifies the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. It justifies killing apostates. It justifies killing people over cartoons and YouTube videos. It justifies honor killings. In other words, it justifies all of the violence, bloodshed, and terrorism that our leaders and the media assure us has nothing to do with Islam.
Partnership between America and Islam must be based on what Islam is, not what it isn't.
But Islam condemns the killing of innocents. Who here is innocent according to the Quran? But Islam forbids terrorist attacks like those on 9/11 because even Muslims were killed in the attacks. Oh yeah? What kind of Muslims? Muslims who work with infidels and pay taxes to a government that's at war in Muslim lands? The kind of Muslims the Quran repeatedly refers to as hypocrites? By the way, not wanting to pay taxes to support Western governments is part of the reason that jihadists in the UK would rather go on state support than get jobs and pay taxes. Now, how difficult is this to figure out? A 4-year-old can understand everything I just said, and yet the most brilliant approach that our leaders and the media have been able to come up with after years of terrorist attacks has been to completely ignore the bloody implications of Surah 533, which was ordained for Muslims, and to instead go to the verse before it, which was ordained for Jews. They rip 532 out of its Jewish context, and they quote part of what remains in an effort to show us that Islam condemns the sort of violence that the very next verse commands Muslims to commit. Why would our leaders do that?
And I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
Well, if politicians and the media consider it their job to protect Islam from scrutiny, I guess business is a booming.
Well,